How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Garage Guys Sports, coming at to you from my house, the Burnside household. Here for another MMA show coming at to you. This will be a prediction show for UFC Fight Night. Thiago Santos versus Glover Teixeira, which is a highly coveted light heavyweight belt in the UFC, where the winner, well, at least until the beginning of this week, was supposed to be the number one contender, presumably, for Jan Blachowicz and the light heavyweight championship. But I guess I should get started with this for this show in particular. The UFC, they made an announcement, I believe this past weekend, Halloween weekend, where Israel noted, or did they make it Tuesday? Or I don't know which day. It doesn't matter. But Israel Adesanya, the UFC middleweight champion, is going to move up a weight class to fight the light heavyweight champion Jan Blachowicz in a money fight for Blachowicz's light heavyweight championship. And you got to imagine that this is a troll move. Well, he did admit it in an interview already. Israel Adesanya is basically doing this as a troll move to John Jones, who recently vacated his longly held light heavyweight title in an effort to move up to heavyweight and win the heavyweight championship up there. I think it's a very interesting fight, to say the least. I haven't seen Adesanya's previous fights, but he really is coming off, according to what I'm hearing, just as unstoppable right now. I gotta watch more pay-per-views, man. Adesanya is more on the pay-per-view side, so I gotta watch him more. But he destroyed his last opponent, who was super hyped, Paulo Costa. I mean, good God, that was just ridiculous. He just stopping him in the second round of a 5-round fight. I mean, like, it wasn't even a contest, and Costa's still ranting about it after the fight's long over. I mean, boy, oh boy, Adesanya really pieced him up in a lot of ways. Unfortunately for Costa, and man, that's going to be an interesting fight. But for the light heavyweight title, who do I think's going to win? Probably Adesanya. I mean, from what I'm hearing about Adesanya, I'm predicting. Just a fan prediction. I'm not an expert. I just want to point that out on every show. I am not an expert. I'm just a fan. I think Adesanya is going to beat out Costa in a striking match. This ain't going to go to the ground. And I think Adesanya will find ways to win. I think it's interesting to see how he'll do in light heavyweight when he gains 20 pounds. In theory, we know he's going to probably weigh maybe a little more than that when the fight happens. But Adesanya being bigger, it's going to be interesting to see how he will fare against a proven commodity at light heavyweight, the proven one in Jan Blachowicz. And Jan is maybe the most underrated light heavyweight champion already ever in the UFC. I don't think there's any debate there. I think a lot of people talk about how they don't even question if Jan's going to lose the belt to his next opponent, including myself, quite frankly. But they're going to question. It's more of a matter of when he's going to lose the belt. So Jan Blachowicz getting no respect from anybody. It's just kind of crazy, really, that Jan, is a guy who won the championship. He won in a championship match against Dominic Reyes by knockout, and it didn't matter. It doesn't matter that Jan won. The fans still think he's going to lose his next championship fight, which is kind of crazy. But I feel bad for the two people in the main event for this card that I'm going to talk about, which is Thiago Santos, who's 36 years old, and Glover Teixeira, who's 41 years old. They're the number 1 and 2 contender, respectively, I think. That reminds me, let me pull up the UFC rankings here. But they are very high up on the card. And, until this Adesanya-Blachowicz light heavyweight title fight was announced, it was pretty obvious to me that the winner of this main event fight for this card was going to fight for the light heavyweight title, and they were going to be next in line, and I feel bad for both of these guys. Both of these guys are not young guys, particularly Teixera. Teixera is 41 years old. He had to reinvent himself at 40 years of age in order to become a contender for this championship again. And even if he wins, he won't fight for the belt. It's just crazy. Crazy. Especially if Adesanya wins. If Adesanya wins, I mean, Jesus Christ. Maybe Blachowicz will win, and I'll be wrong in my prediction, which is very possible. Blachowicz could beat Adesanya. I mean, that guy hits hard, but I don't know. I don't know if it's not guaranteed that Blachowicz will win at all. And if Adesanya wins the light heavyweight title, just these two might as well kiss their championship opportunities in the near future goodbye, because it's not going to happen. And that's pretty sad. I feel pretty bad for both of these Brazilians that are fighting in the main event. And I don't know. It really changes the dynamic of this main event for me in terms of directions, depending on the results. And I will talk about that towards the end of the show, about what each fighter should do, particularly Glover Teixeira should do if he loses this fight. But that is the big news dropping, really, of this card heading into this event. And it doesn't even involve a fight in the card. It involves Adesanya and Blachowicz, champion versus champion, in a fight taking place, I believe that's scheduled to be next year in 2021. But yeah, I feel really bad for both guys. What was I doing? I was pulling up the rankings. Let's see, UFC rankings. I was trying to find out the rankings of Teixeira and Santos. Let's see here. Okay. For the main event for this card, it will be Thiago Santos, who is on paper the number one contender for the championship, against Glover Teixeira, the number 3 contender according to the rankings for the light heavyweight championship. The winner is presumably supposed to be the light heavyweight champion the light heavyweight contender for the light heavyweight championship, but it doesn't look like they're going to get a shot. Yeah, and that brings up an immediate question for me. Immediate question right off the bat. Should this be for an interim light heavyweight title championship? Should this be for an interim championship right off the bat, or should this be subject to be possibly for an interim light heavyweight title? Because both of these guys are, it's robbery, let's be honest, from their perspective, and it's a very understandable perspective, particularly for 41-year-old Glover Teixeira, that they are not going to be next for the championship, particularly if Adesanya wins, because he will fight John Jones if he wins this belt. I have no doubt about that, and it's just too big of a money fight to avoid. John Jones and Israel Adesanya at that point. I mean, the media have been talking about that fight like gangbusters, and it's like, I never was interested in that fight. I never cared about it that much, and quite frankly, and I don't know, maybe that's because I haven't seen all of Israel's fights, and I just didn't want to get on that train, personally. And look, should this be, though, for an interim title? That's the big question that is coming up in my head right now. Thiago Santos, Glover Teixeira. I think it should, but my brain is telling me that it won't, because if it's for an interim title, then they are going to violate it, the idea of the interim title, very quickly if Adesanya wins, because John Jones will fight Israel Adesanya next. And the interim title is supposed to mean, from what I understand, the idea that whoever has the interim title is going to be next to fight for the light heavyweight championship. And that is clearly not on the UFC's cards for this event, for this weight class right at the moment. Especially since the UFC, they love their interim titles, particularly in the last few years. They can't get enough interim championships for some stupid reason, So that I just don't see it happening. I just don't see it being the case. And I don't know if I felt more bad for two main event contender fighters than I do here. I mean, maybe like in the lightweight division when Conor McGregor was holding up the division, but there's very few exceptions as to whether or not I felt more bad than these two. So it's really unfortunate. And hopefully these two get a money fight or something if Jones ends up fighting Adesanya. Hopefully maybe they get to challenge for the heavyweight title next. But even then, that's unfair too. So I'm trying to have it be a win for everybody. Maybe they can fight... I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe they could fight... Jesus, I have no idea. Wow, I really don't know. I don't know. Maybe they could fight a heavyweight. They bring in Brock Lesnar for a fight with one of those two, and have the winner of these two fights go up in heavyweight to fight Brock. I think that would be interesting. It may be more fair to Brock too, because the winner of this fight will be a little smaller. So, but whoever wins that fight will probably still beat Brock. So, I don't know. Maybe that's my only answer. Just offer Brock a shitload of money, and go that route. That seems to be a good route to me. All right, so let's get into the card finally. Stop talking about these shenanigans. This is all Robert Whittaker's fault. If he didn't take Israel Adesanya's, if he would have just accepted it, even though I don't think Israel should have accepted it. If Robert Whittaker would have accepted it, it wouldn't have been a big deal. Like Israel Adesanya probably would have ended up fighting Whittaker again. So, but looking at it from that angle too, Israel Adesanya, I don't blame him for not wanting to fight Whittaker. He already beat him. He already won. So I never thought that was. I totally get, and Adesanya has defended the belt well more than once now. So, or he's at least 2 times, which is my requirement to do a money fight. So, yeah, I don't blame Israel wanting to do a money fight and not fight Whittaker. He's earned it. He's more than earned it. So, and it's hard to earn a money fight. It's beyond hard. So, I don't blame Israel for taking this fight at all. You can't blame him for that. And he's trying to make history too. History in a big way. Let's look at the card finally, and finally move on from news, because this is proving to be a very interesting card that I'm looking forward to, with some very interesting fights put on it. I'll go from the bottom of the card, and I will end it with the top of the card. And forgive me as I look up and down on the computer, because I am going to be using my phone to look at Tapology.com, which will be the website that shows the records of all the fighters and their past victories and defeats, to give me a better sense of who to predict for each fight. So let's take a look here. Starting with the curtain jerker fight. I'm going to be looking at the preliminary card first. The event will take place at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. They've been doing all their shows since the pandemic, except for the first few in Jacksonville. They've been doing all their American shows in this facility with no fans, obviously. This is a UFC facility specifically. So Gustavo Lopez is going to be taking on Anthony Burchack in a bantamweight fight. So this will be interesting. Anthony Burchack looks like he's had more than one run in the UFC. Looking into his career. By the way, the preliminary fights and the main card, well, no, just the preliminary. The preliminary card fights will be taking place on ESPN Plus and potentially ESPN2. That sometimes happens too, but it says on here, as I'm looking at it, that the preliminary fights, at least for this card, are going to be watched primarily on ESPN Plus. That's what I'm reading on the internet. But look on ESPN2 as well for these fights to take place. Possibly. I can't guarantee that for the preliminary. For the main card, though, the main card is, according to what I'm seeing on Google when looking at the fights, the main card fights are going to be taking place on ESPN2 at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So let's see here. First fight in the preliminary portion, it will be Gustavo Lopez versus Anthony Burchack. Burke, I feel like I've seen both of these guys at least once. This is going to be in bantamweight, so 135-pound men division. And let's see. Look at the last few fights. Burchack is 34 years old, which is rather old for a bantamweight at 135 pounds. You got to be very fast to be a bantamweight, and well, you don't have to, but it's extremely helpful. You almost have to. Let's see, UFC notable fights in his career. Anthony's 15-6 in his pro career. He's been in the UFC. He was in the UFC in 2015. Lost in his debut against Ian Entwistle by heel hook, but beat Joe Soto, who was a former title challenger, by TKO. Lost to Thomas Almeida, though. Defeated Delano Lopez. But then he was released. Was on a losing spree. Then won his last fights after that. And he kept winning to where... Well, he won... 1, 2, 3... He won 5 straight outside of the UFC to be brought back. And he is going to be fighting Gustavo Lopez. And interestingly enough, Lopez was brought into his camp is in 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, which is obviously like Eddie Bravo's gym. So, or at least a gym he owns. So we'll see how. So apparently he's particularly special in the ground. Let's look at his opponent, Gustavo Lopez. As I search here, Gustavo is, let's see, he's 31, more in his prime, but they should be in the same skill level at this point. I would assume. Had some losses on his record before getting into the UFC, but won at least 7 of 10 around there. Lost 2 after that, but then won another 3 straight in Combate, to where he fought against Merab Dvalishvili, who defeated him by decision. No shame there. Merab is in the top 15, and he just beat John Dodson, so he's getting there in terms of a top guy. Anthony Burchack. Who who will win this fight? I think this is going to be a close fight. I think, at least on paper, from what I'm seeing, I don't really know the skill set of either guy. Gustavo comes out of what camp does he come out of? He fights out of okay, he comes out of Extreme Couture. So both guys should be good on the ground. Shit. I don't know. I would say I'll go this is tough. This is a tough one. I'll take Burchack. I'll take him barely by just out of experience. I will take him by a very close decision. But I really don't know. This could go either way. That's what happens as usual with these lower fights on the card. I really don't know either competitor in terms of their skill set. So it's really a toss-up for me. That's another thing. I got to watch more regional circuit fights to kind of research these guys a little more. Maybe bring that kind of knowledge to the show better. So look out for that. Maybe I'll look up some regional fights before doing these shows. Okay, let's look up the next fight. Very interesting fight to start the card. Let's go to welterweight, where I at least know one of the names. Max Griffin is taking on a guy I've never heard of named Ramiz Brahimaj. I hope that's how you pronounce it. Let's take a look at Ramiz first, who is 8-2. This will be taking place at welterweight, which is at 170 pounds for the men. Let's see here. Going back. Max Griffin's been in some big fights, so this is an interesting draw for a new guy in Ramiz, which tells me as I'm going through my phone here that right off the bat that Ramiz is somebody to deal with. Ramiz, what country? He fights out of Texas. But it doesn't say where his parent. I guess maybe he's had family come be immigrants. I'm not sure, but I would love to know where his origins of his family are from. But Ramiz is fighting out of Texas in Fortis MMA. Fortis MMA is a camp that's pretty interesting. That's where Uriah Hall comes from. That's where Ryan Spann comes from. That's where Jeff Neal, who just got a fight with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson as for December 19th. I mean, it's a pretty stacked camp. It's becoming one of the more well-known camps, and it's on the Ascension. But so I guess Ramiz is from that camp as well. This should be interesting. As a pro, he first went 6-0, but lost one, won another one in LFA, then lost again, then won by arm triangle choke again. So he's had some tough fights. LFA is no joke as a regional organization. It's just a step below UFC. But now he's fighting Max Griffin, who is been in the UFC for a while. Interesting fight. Let's see. When looking at Griffin's record, Griffin's 34, so he's not old. And Ramiz is, let's see, he's 27. Okay, so he's in his prime, or he's just entering his prime. Max Griffin, though, is a lot more experienced than Ramiz, which will be interesting. But Max has lost his last two. Let's see. Used to be a killer, he still is, but he was on a tear before coming into the UFC. In his debut, he lost to Colby Covington. He got Colby Covington right off the bat in the UFC. Then he beat Eric Montano, lost to Jesus Zaleski dos Santos, another very tough fight. Beat Mike Perry, though. but then it lost his next two against Thiago Alves, a legend, and Curtis Melinder. Beat Zalim Amadeev, but then lost to Alex Morono and Alex Oliveira. Man, this is a very important fight for Max Griffin. Very important. And Ramiz is in that age where he still can improve quite a bit. In terms of, in your 20s, I heard Joe Rogan say this, you can improve quite a bit more with your with stuff. So I think Max Griffin is I don't know. This is a toss-up. UFC's good at making matchups here, and I think Max gets the job done. I don't know. I think more pressure is on him, and I don't know. I just think the experience will outweigh the talent here, and it's not like Max Griffin doesn't have talent. So I don't know. I'll take Max to get this win. This is an important win. I think he'll pull it out. The UFC likes to make matches like this with older guys that are that lost their last couple fights. They're going to be given a guy who really wants to be a killer, or that really could be one. So that's kind of the MO of UFC booking or matchmaking these days. So, but I don't think it will work for the new guy here. I have an instinct that it will be Max Griffin for some reason, and that again, I don't know anything about Ramiz, but so I'll take Max Griffin by experience and take a risk there. So that's who I will pick there. All right, next fight on the card will be, interesting, a featherweight fight between a well-known guy, Darren Elkins, 25-9, taking on 13-1 promising prospect, Luis Eduardo Garagori, for the third fight of the night. Luis, what's the age difference here? Okay, Luis is 31, Darren Elkins is 36, so that's interesting. Let's take a look at who they fought. Darren Elkins coming out of Team Alpha Male. Seems to really find a home there. But he is being given a killer here. Apparently. I don't know if I've seen Garagori fight. I might have. Garagori fighting out of Uruguay. He's 31. Let's see here. How many UFC fights has he had? Was undefeated until, of course, coming to the UFC. Won his UFC debut, though, against Humberto Bandone by decision, but then lost to Ricardo Ramos by rear naked choke. Ricky Ramos. Oh, man, this is tough. Darren Elkins being 36 years old as a featherweight, that never looks good. But Elkins has been in the UFC forever, so this will be interesting. Let's take a look at Elkins' record and take a look here at what he's accomplished. Elkins out of Indiana was undefeated until his 8th fight, where he lost by doesn't say. Won his next 2 though to finally get in the UFC, and where he beat Dwayne Ludwig, who was a former trainer of Team Alpha Male. Then he lost to Charles Oliveira by armbar, no shame there. But then he won his next 5 fights in a row, which I think is very impressive. Lost to Chad Mendes, though, by TKO. He won against Hatsu Hioki after that. We're still in 2013, so he's had a long career. Lost to Jeremy Stevens. No shame there. Lost to he beat Lucas Markins by split decision. Lost to Hakron Diaz when Diaz was really good, or when he was better than he is now, by decision. But then he went on went on another 6-fight win streak. I think this was the run of his career. He beat Robert Whiteford by decision. Chaz Skelly, very impressively, by decision. Godofredo Pepe by decision. Mirsad Bektic, I think that was the the win of his career where he gave it everything he had. He was losing the fight, and he just put it on in the third round and ended up taking him out by TKO. The announcers went nuts and everything. He submitted Michael Johnson. I think that might be the biggest win of his career. But then he's been on a 4-fight losing streak since. So this seems to be a very important fight for Elkins. He lost to Volkanovski, the now featherweight champion. Lost to Ricardo Lamas, who just retired, but you know he's a former featherweight title contender, so there's no shame there. Lost by he's had a rough loss though by him, TKO. Lost to Ryan Hall by decision. Ryan Hall, who's a specialist on the ground, wasn't able to submit him, and lost to a guy named Nate Landwehr by decision. This could be a very pivotal fight for Elkins' career if he loses this fight. You know, if he loses this fight, his future remains uncertain because this will be his 5th loss in a row, it seems. And I don't know. If he loses this fight, and if he loses this fight badly against a younger guy in what's his name? Garagori, I don't know. I don't know what he should do. Maybe he should retire. I have no idea. He's not 38. He's 36, so he still has some time, you know, maybe for a fighter. But he's getting there now. He's getting there in age, and he's taken a lot of damage in some fights. So I don't know. This will be interesting to see. If Elkins loses, he could either, if he doesn't retire, he could also potentially be released by the UFC. So, because this will be his 5th loss in a row. So, I don't know, man. This was tough. And I don't take him to win this fight either. I'm going to take Garagori. My gut's telling me Garagori's going to win this fight, particularly. So, I could be wrong on that, though. Team Alpha Male obviously is an amazing camp, but I just don't have Elkins winning this fight. So, I'm rooting for Elkins, but I just don't see him winning here. Let's see. Next fight on the card will be Marcos Rogerio de Lima taking on Alexander Romanov. This should be a fun fight at heavyweight. De Lima seems more like a light heavyweight, though. It's interesting to see him go up. Romanov is undefeated at 12-0. I believe this fight was supposed to take place maybe a month or so ago, but one of these two got COVID. I think that's what happened. And let me just check and see. Canceled. Yep. Okay, I found it here. Okay, in the beginning of September, De Lima and the fight with Romanov was canceled due to a positive COVID test by De Lima. Yep. So I don't know why it took so long to put it into this week, but you know that's what happened in the main event of this card too. So it's kind of symbolic that for this fight in that way. De Lima, this is not his first venture into heavyweight. Let's take a look at his career, though. De Lima is 35. Romanov, I believe it says he is 29. De Lima was undefeated until a fight in Strikeforce, where he lost his next two again with Mike Kyle and Carlos Eduardo in Chudo, Brazil. Then he won 3 in a row after that to get into the UFC. Or no, 3 in a row and then a draw. And then he got into the UFC. Won his next 2 fights against Richardson Morea and Igor Prokhorjak by punches. I believe this is at light heavyweight. Finally fought Nikita Krylov in his next fight, where he lost by rear naked choke. Then he beat Clint Hester by arm triangle, but then lost to Gadzimurad Antigulov by guillotine. I think is this where he finally fought? No. I'm wondering where he got into the heavyweight game from, because he used to be a light heavyweight fighter. That's what I remember him from. But he moved into heavyweight. He moved up a weight class. Beat Clint Hester after Nikita, or no, I already said that. He beat Jeremy Kimball after Antigulov by TKO, but then lost to Ovens by what else? St. Preux choke, I should say. Then he beat Adam Wykrojek. Is that a heavyweight fight? Let's see. Yes, that was his first heavyweight fight, where he won by decision, but then lost to Stefan Struve by choke. But he won his last fight against Ben Sosoli by punches in the first round. So he's clearly an effective heavyweight fighter, but so is Alexander Romanov, who is 12-0 and seems to be a very good grappler, which could be a problem for De Lima, since he has been lost by choke a number of times. So this will be interesting to see. Let's take a look here. We have let's take a look. We have, come on, Romanov. Okay, here we go. So he was 11-0 heading into his UFC debut, roughly a couple months ago. And he seems to be a well-known grappler, because I see all of his wins by some kind of grappling submission. But when he entered into the UFC, the same thing happened. He beat Roque Martinez by arm triangle choke in the second round. So he is clearly a threat on the ground. And with that being said, I don't see De Lima winning this fight. I think Romanov will win again, and he will be a player in this heavyweight division, an up-and-coming guy in the rankings. So that's what I think will happen. So I pick Romanov. Next fight on the card will be Giga. Sounds like interesting name. Giga Chikazi taking on Jamie Simmons in a featherweight fight. Let's take a look here. Giga, I'd love to know where he's from. Giga fighting out of Huntington Beach, but he can't be. What's the flag? What's the flag on here? Oh, he's from Georgia, Tbilisi, Georgia. I'll tell you what, these Eastern European fighters that are coming up in mixed martial arts are some of the elites of the elites. They are just dominating right now. So this is it's always interesting to see an Eastern European guy fight. 6 feet tall, and he's a featherweight. Okay. Yeah, he's a featherweight. So let's take a look at his career. He is 32 years old. Highly successful. Fought in Glory. So he's a kickboxer. And he, let's see, yeah, he won a number of his fights. He did lose a handful of fights before getting to the UFC, so it's interesting to see him in there. But he seems to be a very impressive fighter, qualified enough certainly for UFC. He is in the UFC. He beat Brandon Davis by split decision, Jamal Emmers by split decision. Emmers is a good fighter. That's impressive. Erwin Rivera by decision, and Omar Morales by decision. So he's won, but he hasn't had a finish yet in the octagon, but he's had nothing but wins. Jamie Simmons, let's take a look at him. I feel like I've never seen Simmons in before. So this is his UFC debut. Doesn't look like he had a fight in the Contender Series to get into the UFC, so this will be his debut. Tough debut for a guy who's on a winning streak in the UFC. Hasn't lost. Just to take a look at Simmons' record, Simmons is 28. I don't know how old Giga is. I forgot to look that up. He's 32. Okay. So both are in their prime, or at least Simmons is entering his. Let's see. For his first 5 fights, he won 4 of them. And lost his next fight after that by KO. But then won his next 3 in a row. Winning all by finishes. So he seemed to have gotten the UFC's attention with those performances, it seems. And he's fighting Giga. I'm going to give it to Giga. I think that kind of being 4-0 in the UFC, decision or no decision, it's very impressive. That's very impressive, and there's got to be a confidence there with Giga, I imagine right now, to where that's pretty undeniable. And for it being the debut of his opponent, it will be. I feel like there will be a lot of butterflies in his stomach, and I think that will very least be a deciding factor. So that's my guess as a fan. I will take Giga Chikazi to get the win against the American. Next fight on the card will be Trevin Giles, and this is the final fight in the prelims. Trevin Giles, I believe the former football player, taking on Bevan Lewis in a middleweight clash at 185 pounds. I'm aware of both of these fighters. I don't know Bevan Lewis's record very well. Bevan's 29, Trevin is 28, both fighting out of the U.S. Let's see. If you could hear in the background, my grandpa's watching some westerns. Apologize about that. I think it adds an interesting background to a commentary about fighting. But let's see. Bevan Lewis. He is very young in his career. Won his first 2 fights, then got in his first fight in LFA where he won by decision. Okay, he did appear in the Contender Series where he knocked out a guy, but I guess the UFC thought he needed more time, so he won 2 more fights won another fight in LFA, and then he won by KO again in another Contender Series fight. That's where he fought Uriah Hall, got KO'd by him, and then he lost to Darren Stewart by decision. But then after that, he beat Daquan Townsend, who's a very good fighter as well, by decision. Trevin Giles is another very impressive athlete as well. Let's see here. And he's more experienced in the UFC and as a fighter in general. Let's see. Won his last Jesus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Won 8 in a row before getting into LFA. Then beat Ryan Spann in LFA by split decision. That's impressive. Then he beat James Boknovic for his UFC debut by ground and pound. Was I there? No, I wasn't there. I was there for this fight, though. He beat Antonio Braga Neto by an impressive TKO victory. Actually, that was a fight that took place in Fresno, where I live, obviously, and I wasn't in the building at that point. I actually saw that fight on Fight Pass, but still a very, very impressive victory. He controlled that entire fight. Then he lost to Zach Cummings. He's an impressive fighter. Lost again to Gerald Meerschaert, I assume. Yeah, he lost both on the ground, so that's where his weakness is. But then he impressively defeated James Krause by decision. So now he's fighting Bevan Lewis. You know, both are in their prime, but Giles is a year younger and he's more experienced. I'm going to take Giles to win here. I don't know why he's. Well, his last fight was in February, so it's not that he's not that inactive. So, but yeah, I'll take Giles to win here. This will be a fun fight to watch. Very fun fight. But I will take Giles with the win. Let's get into the main card, folks. First fight in the main card is super interesting. You have the women's strawweight division at 115 pounds. The former UFC strawweight title contender, Claudia Gadelha, taking on a very hot prospect, the number 8 ranked Yan Xiaonan, who's 12-1 out of China. Claudia, respectively, is from Brazil. But Claudia's fought everybody at this point in her career. Let's take a look at both fighters going into the main card here. This is a big fight for Claudia. Big fight for her. Well, every fight in terms of the rankings for these two in the strawweight title division, it's a big fight. So, you know, you have to win, obviously, to go on, and they're right there for the title picture. So, let's look at first Xiaonan Yan. I don't know much about her. She's from China. She is 31 years old, so she's not like she's 26. Let's see. She won her first 2, lost one after that, but then she went on a tear. 1, 2, 3, 4. Won 4 in a row, and then finally got into the UFC. Then she beat Katlyn Curran by decision. I might have seen that fight. Then she beat Viviane Pereira by decision. Beat Siori Kondo by decision. Then beat Angela Hill by decision. That's impressive. Then she beat Carolina by decision this year in February. That's a very impressive run. But you know what? I don't see, if she beat Carolina by decision, I don't see her beating Claudia, frankly, by that same amount. I don't know. Even though she's the up-and-coming contender, Claudia's fought everybody, man. And I don't know. I wonder how this woman is on the ground, quite frankly. Because Claudia will bring it on the ground. Claudia's had a long career. She's the same age, though, as Yan. She's still in her prime. Won her first 11 in a row, or 10 in a row, before getting into the UFC, where she beat, I can't even pronounce this woman's name, Tina Landamecki. Then she fought Joanna. She went right into fighting Joanna. This is before Joanna was the champion, in a very razor-close split decision. She then beat Jessica Aguilar, who was very good at the time. Then that's when she had the Ultimate Fighter after that, and that's when that was a great rivalry. Her and Joanna. It still is. They still hate each other. But Joanna and her tore it up in their title fight. That was an awesome fight. You could really make the argument that Claudia won that fight and she should have been the strawweight champion, at least at the time. You know, I really do. But it's not what happened. After that, Claudia really couldn't go to the title, so she had to really make a lot of wins before getting another title shot against Joanna. So she beat Courtney Casey, and she beat Karolina Kowalkiewicz by rear naked choke in a very impressive win. But then she got smashed by Jessica Andrade in Japan. Beat Carla Esparza. I didn't really pay close attention to that fight when it happened. So Claudia complained Carla complained that she won, and you know, it was a very close fight. She then lost to Nina Anzarov by decision. Then she beat Ronda Marcos by decision. Then she beat Angela Hill by split decision this year. But Angela Hill and a lot of people also believe that Angela Hill won that fight, but I didn't see that fight. So Zhao Nanyan, clearly they didn't seem to promote Claudia after that win against Angela, so I think that says something. I'll take Claudia to win that fight. I know that Zhao Nan, people will see this as a big opportunity for her, and she does as well, to probably to rise to the occasion. But I do not see her beating Claudia. That's just my opinion. I think it seems on paper that Claudia is a better grappler, and they're the same age and everything. And I don't know. I just don't see Zhao Nan having the answer against Claudia in the grappling department. So with that being said, I think Claudia will secure another win. Claudia, if she keeps winning and she remains strong in the latter part of her career, she could be a Hall of Fame caliber fighter, with or without a title. She's really getting to that point, and I think she would deserve it if she stays on this path of relatively winning at least. Next fight we have on the card is a fight that I hear is getting a lot of attention on Twitter because these two are doing a lot of smack talk toward each other. Ian Heinisch taking on Brendan Allen in the middleweight division at 185. Ian is 32. Brendan is pretty young at 24 years old, but bigger, 6'2", while Ian is 5'9". Same weight, though. Brendan has the reach. As I'm looking at the stats here, let's take a look at their records. If I remember correctly, Ian had a very impressive win in his last outing, so let's take a look and see. And people have a lot of high hopes for Brendan Allen, so I'll take a look at Ian first. Ian, in his pro career, he won all his amateur fights. Pro career, he won his first 7 fights before finally losing to Marcus Perez in LFA by arm triangle. Then he won his next 5 fights after that, including one UFC contender fight where he won via TKO. Then he won his next UFC fight, 2 UFC fights where he beat Cesar Ferreira by decision, and then he beat Antonio Carlos Jr. by decision. Those are 2 impressive wins at middleweight. Very impressive. Then he lost to Derek Brunson, who's on a tear right now, by decision. And then he lost to Omari Akhmedov, who's another very impressive fighter, by decision. He beat Gerald Meerschaert, though, by a KO punch, apparently, in his last fight in June. Whoa! I didn't know Gerald Meerschaert got knocked out before fighting Khamzat. I didn't know that. That's interesting. I wonder if Gerald recovered a whole lot before fighting Khamzat, before fighting him, because he fought Khamzat as early as maybe October or maybe September. So that's not long enough to recover from a KO punch, particularly in this heavy of a division. I don't know. I think that's interesting. That sold. I didn't see the Khamzat knockout, but in terms of impressiveness, from what I'm hearing, from what I know about it, it just lowered a little bit for me. So I don't know. That's interesting. Brendan Allen. Let's take a look at him, the 24-year-old. Going to his page. Brendan Allen was undefeated as an amateur. Then he fought as a pro, won his first 2 fights before losing to Trevin Giles. No shame there. Brendan was only 20 years old at the time. Then he won his next 5 fights, including one in LFA. Then he lost to Eric Anders, another powerful UFC fighter, by decision. Beat Chris Harris in his next fight. Then lost to another future UFC fighter, Anthony Hernandez, by decision. Again, Brendan Allen at this point is super young, so he's still learning. Then he won his next 3 fights after that. And then he beat Aaron Jeffrey in the Contender Series. That's where he had won by rear naked choke. Then after that, he beat Kevin Holland. Wow, that's impressive. By rear naked choke. Then he beat Tom Breeze, who's a very impressive fighter too, by ground and pound. Then he beat Kyle Dawkins by decision. Ooh, this is a good fight. This is a very good fight. Ian Heinisch and Brendan Allen. Ooh. I don't know. I do not know. That's a very... It seems that Brendan Allen is super good on the ground. And Heinisch seems to be more of a KO guy. That's close. I have no idea. You know what? I'm going to go... I don't know. I do not know. Heinisch did knock out Gerald Meerschaert, but he lost to Omari Akhmedov, who's another grappler. And I'm sure Omari grappled him to death in his fight. That's tough. I'm gonna go Ian Heinisch, but I really don't know. This fight really could go either way. It's a good fight. I don't know. I do not know. I think. I don't know. I'll go Ian Heinisch. That's my guess. I bet he's the favorite. He's smaller than Brendan Allen, and Brendan Allen's pretty tall, so maybe that will add to him making it harder to get a takedown. But I don't know if that will really matter, honestly, in terms of takedown capabilities for Brendan Allen. Heinisch though has knockout power clearly, so. And he just did that to Gerald Meerschaert, who's a ground guy. So maybe it's the familiarity of handling that game of takedown defense versus then using knockout ability. Maybe that will play to Ian Heinisch's game. So with that being said, I'm going to take Ian Heinisch by knockout, by a surprising knockout. But this could go either way. I'm not confident about this pick at all. This is a close fight. Close fight. All right, next fight. It will be very interesting as well. Bantamweight at 135 pounds for the men. 15-1. Rayoni Barcelos taking on 13-2 Khalid Taha. Let's take a look at both fighters here. Rayoni fighting out of Brazil. I don't know. I wonder where Taha's fighting from. I feel like I've seen him before. He might be fighting from New Zealand. I'm not sure. By the way, I wanted to mention this. Does anybody find it interesting that all of these foreign-based fighters, these international based fighters, are coming into America during a pandemic, seemingly very easily? Does anybody find that interesting? No? Does anybody care? I just find it interesting that that's happening during a pandemic, and countries are allowing these fighters to go into the United States, which is the worst country with coronavirus out there. So, particularly if Khalid Taha's from New Zealand, because New Zealand is like, no, we do not want coronavirus. So, okay, no, he's from Germany, but still, like, Europe is getting thrashed with coronavirus numbers right now. So I just find it interesting that the UFC is able to get all these international fighters into the United States for their fights. I don't know. I feel like I'm the only one in the world noticing this. So I don't know. That's just my take on things. That's just an observation. Rayoni Barcelos. I'm trying to get to his page. Rayoni is 33. Or no, it says he's 35 on here. Okay, I'll believe this one. He's 35. And he has a very impressive win on here for his record. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Won his first 6 fights as a pro, then lost finally in RFA to a guy named Mark Dickman. Then won 4 in a row before getting his UFC debut where he beat Kurt Holobaugh by KO. Then he beat Chris Gutierrez by submission. Then Carl Swatchin by TKO. Wow, this guy's impressive. Then he beat Said Nurmagomedov, who is a relative of Habib Nurmagomedov. You know, one of the greatest of all time, arguably. So this guy is super impressive. Khalid Taha is 27 years old, significantly younger here. Won his first 10 fights, including one at Rizin, before finally losing by guillotine choke. Then he won by rear naked. Then when he was 11-1, he made his UFC debut, lost to a guy named Nad Narimani by decision, but then beat UFC Contender Series alum Boston Selman by at least looks like by knockout. So this is very interesting. I think this is almost unfortunate for Rayoni Barcelos to fight a hot unranked fighter like this, a very good killer that's not ranked and is hungry. Because Rayoni's fought 4 guys, including Habib's cousin, I want to say, and he's been impressive. So I don't know. I think that's unfortunate for Rayoni. I think he should be fighting top 15 guys now, or a guy who's like exiting out of the top 15 too. He should be going up in the rankings, is my point. And just looking at it on paper, I haven't really seen either fighter, frankly. I don't believe, and I'm going to take Rayoni on this one. But this could go either way. It really could. Another fight that really could go either way. But I will take Rayoni. Clearly the UFC matchmakers see a lot in these fighters to where they are putting him super high up on this card. But I think Rayoni will still get the win. And after that, if he wins, he should get a top 15 guy next. He has earned it. That would be 5 wins in the UFC at this point. Next fight on the card will be the co-main event of the evening. Second to last fight on the card. What was it? I totally forgot what it was. All right, co-main event of the evening. And woo, this is interesting. Interesting fight in the heavyweight division. The legendary, the future Hall of Famer, Andre the Pitbull Arlovski, the former UFC heavyweight champion of the world, will be taking on Tanner Boser, who is an up-and-coming fighter in the rankings. So legend versus young contender here. Young versus old, but, respectfully. But Andre, for a heavyweight, he's not too old. 41 is not... You can fight. John McCarthy said this a few weeks ago, and I found it fascinating, but true when you look at records for heavyweights. Heavyweight fighters can fight until they are in their 40s. Like they could still fight, be a contender in their 40s, and you're seeing it with Alistair Overeem, who's like close to being a #1 contender, and Stipe, he's getting up there too. He's 36, but my point is you can be older as a heavyweight and still be an effective fighter in the rankings. Andre won his last fight, but let's first look at the career of Tanner Boser, and then look at the legendary Hall of Fame worthy career of the former UFC heavyweight champion. He's a Hall of Famer. It's just a matter of him, ending his career at a certain point, and then time will have to go. Well, obviously have to pass, and then he'll get nominated. It's just there's no way he's not going into the Hall of Fame. But let's take a look here at Tanner Boser, who is proving to be a smaller but very crafty heavyweight fighter. Tanner won his first 6 fights before losing to Tim Hague by KO. Then he won another 3 in a row. Lost to a guy named Kazbek Saidalev in I guess a clearly a Russian show. Then he won another 3 in a row, lost his next 2 after that, then won another 3, lost 1. Boy, he's been around for a while. He is 29 years old. That's very young for a heavyweight. Then won another a fight after he lost the fight after winning 3. Then he won another one, and then that's when he got called into the UFC for, I believe it seems like a short notice fight, but he still beat a guy named Daniel Spitz. I remember him. He's a pretty tall guy. Beat him by decision. But then he fought Surreal Gain. Surreal Gain he's got a huge fight coming up. I forgot who he's fighting, but he's a contender, man. He's a contender for this heavyweight division. Super powerful guy. But Boser was just a lot smaller, and he just couldn't get anything on Gain in that fight, so he lost. But he didn't get knocked out, so he lost by decision. After that, though, Boser has been in an impressive little run. He beat Felipe Lins by TKO, and then he beat Rafael Pessoa by ground and pound for his next fight. So he's being given a legend here. And I wonder if Boser is ranked. Boser and Arlovski. No, neither one is ranked at this point in the division. Arlovski, let's look at the career of Andrei Arlovski, shall we? Shall we? Let's give ourselves a treat here. Guy who's done it all, who is 12 years the elder statesman of Tanner Boser, the Canadian. Arlovski living, I believe, technically in Belarus, but he considers himself Russian, pretty much. I think he pretty much, his life has been around Russia or in Russia, so he pretty much considers himself a Russian, and so does everybody else. Arlovski, starting his career pre 9/11 in 1999, and he was 3-1 before making his debut in the UFC in 2000. Before 9/11 took place, that's when he made his debut. Beat a guy named Aaron Brink, then lost 2 fights after that. Lost to Rico Rodriguez and Pedro Hizo. But then he went on a tear. I think that's where he won the title. Beat Ian Freeman, Vladimir Machusenko, Wesley Correa, Tim Sylvia. That might be where he won the title. Then he lost to. He beat Justin Eilers after that. Then he beat Paul Puentello, but that's when he lost to Tim Sylvia and lost his title. Then he lost again to Sylvia. After that, though, he went on another tear. He beat Marcio Cruz, Fabricio Verdum, Jake O'Brien, and that's when he got out of the UFC. Beat Ben Rothwell in Affliction, beat Roy Nelson in Elite XC. And after that, that's where he got famously knocked out by KO Fedor by KO as he was jumping up towards him. Lost to Brett Rogers in Strikeforce. Big Nog, Big Nog, Antonio Silva by decision. Then Sergey Karatonov by knockout. After that, though, Arlovski went on another win streak. He won 4 in a row after that, but then lost to Anthony Johnson in World Series of Fighting number 2. After that, though, in 2013, he went on another win streak. Won 2 in a row, beat Brendan Schaub for his UFC return, then got his win back against Bigfoot, Antonio Silva by TKO. Beat Travis Brown in a classic UFC fight, a crazy fight by decision. Then beat Frank Mir by decision. After that, though, he lost 5 in a row after that. Lost to Stipe. That right before Stipe won the belt. Lost to Alistair. That's where Alistair was on a roll. Lost to Josh Barnett. I remember watching that fight. Got knocked out by Francis when Francis was ascending. Lost to Marcin Tybura. After that, though, he beat Junior Albini and Stefan Struve. And after that, he lost to Tai Tuivasa, Shamil Abdurrahimov, and Augusto Sakai. He beat Ben Rothwell, though, recently, last year, by decision, but then got knocked out by Jorginho Rosenstrike. But his last fight was a win. He won by decision against Felipe Lins. You know, I don't know, man. This is I don't see Andre retiring if he loses this fight, but I don't see him winning this fight. I think Tanner Boser is a little too crafty, and he will find a way to beat Andre. But I don't know. It could be by knockout. I predict that it probably will, but I could see this being a decision. Andre is just too tough, far too tough, and too crafty for me to fully believe that he is going to just be knocked out just like that. But Tanner Boser is far too crafty for me to believe that he will lose this fight, and I think this is a lot like Augusto Sakai versus Alistair Overeem to me. But I don't think Tanner Boser is going to fall for any veteran tricks with Andre like how Augusto did with Alistair. I think this is different, and I think Tanner's a little craftier, and I think because of that will give him the win against the veteran in Andre Arlovski. But that's my pick and what will happen. I love predicting the heavyweight fights because I pretty much know how to guess those fights. So because of that, I love predicting the fights. But that's my pick. I think Tanner Boser will be very interesting, and I think with this win, he will enter into the top 15. That's my pick. But I really hope Andre wins. Like, I love Andre Arlovski. That was the first main event fight that I've ever heard of in mixed martial arts. Was Andre Arlovski versus Tim Sylvia. And Andre Arlovski at the time was the man. So I don't think Andre Arlovski gets enough respect from anybody. Anybody. Not even Russia, I don't think. Before Khabib was a god, Andre was a god long before Khabib. I mean, Andre should receive eternal respect over in Russia and in MMA. So I just think, and Luke Thomas, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, the MMA journalist, a couple days ago, and he says a number of fighters, there's not very many fighters left that have made their debuts pre 9/11, and he mentioned names like Anderson Silva, Diego Sanchez was mentioned. Who else? Overeem was mentioned, and one more. It might have been a welterweight. I don't know. It wasn't Andre. It wasn't Andre Arlovski. And Andre Arlovski made his UFC debut before 9/11. So he doesn't get respect. He just doesn't, and that's really unfortunate. Really unfortunate. So I hope that's not the case here, that he loses, but I don't think he'll win. I think Tanner Boser will get the win. And that leaves us with the main event of the evening. It is time, baby. It's time. Let's look at the main event between the two guys who will arguably not be the number one contender for the UFC light heavyweight title, as I talked about earlier. It will be Thiago Santos taking on Glover Teixeira. Glover is the number one ranked fighter, Thiago is the number one ranked fighter. Glover is the number 3 ranked fighter, respectively, in the UFC rankings. Looking at both guys, I already have a strong prediction of who the winner is going to be. Let's take a look here, though. Let's look at their very impressive resumes. Teixeira, it's more debatable if he's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday, but he has an argument as to him being into the Hall of Fame. let's look at the 41-year-old's record. Teixera has his own gym that he fights out of, I think. His debut, he lost in 2002. Then he won his next two, but then lost to Ed Herman in 2005. Since then, Teixera was on a tear. Won his next, good God, he won his next 20 fights. That is super impressive. Within that list, in 2012 is when he made his UFC debut. He beat Kyle Kingsbury by arm triangle. He beat, then he beat Fabio Maldonado by doctor stoppage, so he damaged him pretty hard. Then he beat Quentin Jackson by decision, Rampage by decision. Then he beat James Tahuna by guillotine, and defeated the now Bellator heavyweight champion Ryan Bader by KO, by punches, TKO. That's when he fought John Jones for the UFC light heavyweight title, where Jones broke his shoulder, or just injured his shoulder early in the first round. Jones really decisively beat him in that fight. That's when John Jones was really John Jones, and it was a super, Teixera, though, he didn't get finished, unlike a lot of fighters before him with Jones. Then he lost to Phil Davis by decision. After that, though, he went on a 3-fight win streak, beating impressive guys like Ovince St. Preux by rear naked. He beat Patrick Cummings by TKO, and he knocked out Rashad Evans, I believe, in a main event fight on Fox. After that, though, he got knocked out senseless by Anthony Johnson. Then he beat Jared Cannonier, though, a high-ranking fighter in middleweight now. Then he lost to Gustafsson. Very impressively, Gustafsson beat him by KO. After that, though, he TKO'd Misha Serkunov. Teixera never gave up, man. He reinvented himself, really, in his career. And then he then he lost to Corey Anderson by decision. After that, though, he won 4 in a row. That's along with the draw along the way. But that's super impressive. Well, no, that was a grappling match with Jake Shields. But he won 4 in a row, beat Carl Roverson, Iwan Kutelaba, both by submission, then beat Nikita Krylov by split decision, then destroyed Anthony Smith this year by ground and pound TKO. Really beat him up in that fight, unfortunately, because the ref stopped it late. But, Teixera really, really put the work in to get this new potential title fight, and the UFC just snatched it away from him, just like that. So, it's a bunch of shit. As Daniel Cormier said on his show with Ariel Helwani this week, Teixeira is 5 years older than Thiago Santos. If you're Glover, you have every right to be angry right now. Every right to. Because he got robbed. He got robbed out of a potential title fight. And I think if Glover loses this fight, he has good reason to retire now. Because he'll need to get even more wins, because now this title fight with Adesanya, and especially if Adesanya wins, what a mess that will be, So, I don't know. It's Glover. If Glover loses this fight, and I'm not saying one second. If Glover loses this fight, he very well will have to retire, because he'll have to work. He'll have to get 2 or 3 fights in as a 41-year-old light heavyweight to get to a title shot. And light heavyweight is getting a lot harder with these guys coming in. These with Dominic Reyes, he's never fought him. The guy that Dominic Reyes is fighting, Yuri Prochazka, Jesus Christ, he'd have to fight him. He'd have to fight, who's the guy that just beat Anthony Smith? Ratchik. He'd have to beat Ratchik. I mean, these fights, these matchups at light heavyweight are getting harder and harder. They're not getting easier with John Jones gone. Overall it seems to be getting harder, and each fight is harder. So I don't know what to say. It's just, it sucks for Glover. If Glover wins, though, that's why I wish this was an interim title fight, upon hearing the news this week. The next fighter in this main event, Thiago Santos, who is 21-7 compared to Glover's 31-7. Both fighters based out of Brazil. Thiago having a super impressive run the last couple of years, from going up from middleweight to light heavyweight. Thiago has super big knockout power. He's known as, his nickname is, where is it? What's his nickname? Marietta. Isn't that like I forgot what that is. But he's literally known as, has a sledgehammer tattoo on his chest. This guy's a monster, and it's there for a reason, because his hands are like sledgehammers. He is a knockout artist. So is Glover, though. Glover, to my knowledge, is a great boxer. So this should be a great striking affair if it ends up that way. Thiago, though, seems to be more of a Muay Thai fighter. Made his debut 10 years ago. Won his first 7 fights before losing to Vicente Luque, who out in a regional fight. Vincente's a great welterweight fighter now. Then he won another fight, then lost to Cesar Ferreira by guillotine. So again, another tough one. Cesar's a tough middleweight. Ronnie Marks he beat in his debut. Well, no, Cesar Ferreira was his UFC debut, but then he beat Ronnie Marks by body kick and punches. Then lost to Uriah Hall by decision. After that, though, Thiago went on a 4-fight win streak. He beat Andy Enns, Steve Bosse, who's in World Series of Fighting now. Elias Theoduro, I remember that fight. He won that fight by decision. Then he knocked out Nate Marquardt, impressively, by TKO, apparently. After that, he lost to Gegard Mousasi, the current Bellator middleweight champion, no shame there. Lost to Eric Spicely in an upset by rear naked. After that, though, he went on a win streak again. He beat Jack Marshman, Gerald Mershart, Jack Hermanson, Anthony Smith. After that, though, he got knocked out by David Branch, but then he beat Kevin Holland by decision. I believe that's when he moved on to light heavyweight at that period in 2018. And that's when he beat Eric Anders by retirement. Eric Anders quit on the stool, or the doctor stopped it or something. Jimmy Manoa, he knocked out. Manoa's retired now, but I don't think because of him. And he has a win over the current UFC light heavyweight champion, Jan Blachowicz, for God's sakes, by TKO in the 3rd round. After that, though, he lost to John Jones in a very, very close decision fight last year for the light heavyweight championship. I didn't see that fight, but apparently it was super close by the numbers. And I wonder, I'm kind of bummed that I didn't see that fight, because I'm specifically curious about Thiago's takedown defense and against John Jones, because to me, if Thiago's a Muay Thai fighter and John Jones is a high-level collegiate wrestler, I don't see why John Jones didn't just take Thiago down. In fact, I think analysts were wondering about that, but maybe his takedown defense was good. I didn't see the fight, unfortunately. God, why didn't I see the fight? But Thiago, Thiago's a super impressive fighter. Clearly, super impressive. Who do I think's going to win? Again, makes me regret not seeing Thiago's fight with John Jones, because maybe he defended takedowns against John Jones. If he didn't, and John Jones just decided to stand on the feet against a Muay Thai fighter, then I'm going to take Glover Teixeira to win this fight, because Glover clearly is a high-level ground fighter. He has wins by submission. I don't think Thiago has any wins by submission or on the ground. So, in fact, I think he has losses, clearly, when you look at his career. Yeah, he's more of a stand-up fighter. Well, he does have a win by ground and pound. So he is a striker. He's not an idiot probably on the ground. But I don't know if he has it against, is good enough to defend against Teixeira. That's what I'm wondering. And Teixeira seems to be clearly a great jiu-jitsu fighter. If it's standing on the feet, I pick Thiago. I think Teixeira is a little older, and even though Teixeira is a boxer, Thiago is a Muay Thai fighter. I just think he seems to have more weapons on the feet, but I think it's super close. I think Teixeira is going to be more tactful than Thiago. I'm going to take Teixeira in a very close, very, very close fight. I'm not confident about this decision. I think Teixeira will find a way to get it on the ground, and if it's on the ground, Thiago will have a great defense, but I just think over time, Teixeira will get the advantage on the ground, and he could submit him, or at least control the fight on the ground. So I think it will be close. I don't think Teixeira will dominate at all, but I think Teixeira will control the fight on the ground. So with that being said, I thought I was going to pick Thiago, until analyzing this, but I picked Teixeira. I don't know. I'm not confident about it, but tactfully, if Teixeira stays the course, I think Teixeira will win this fight. And so, I don't know. That's who I'll pick. I think it could be a surprise win. It won't be a surprise, though, at all if Thiago gets the win. If Thiago ends up defending it and just knocking him out. That's what I was thinking before, but I don't know now. I don't know what's going to happen. So, with that being said, I will take Teixeira as my final answer to win this fight. And I think Teixeira will lose his shit if Adesanya wins the title fight, because he will not get Adesanya next. He will have to wait, and which will make him be older. He could be 43 years old when he fights for a title, and at that point, he might not be able to wait that long. He'll maybe have to fight the winner of Prochazka and Reyes, and at that point, fuck you, UFC. So why on earth would Teixeira want to have any reason to take that fight? I know he's a fighter and he takes on all comers, but give me a fucking break if that happens. And that could very easily happen. UFC has done that kind of stuff before. They have screwed over fighters in rankings like that. They do it all the time. They don't care about you. They care about business and moving forward with business. And they don't care about respect and the deserving contender and that shit. They don't care. They care about money. And they've proven that time and time again with people like Tony Ferguson and stuff like that. They'll do it all day long. They don't care. They don't give a shit. So, that's where I really feel bad with the fighters in this sport, because these people, I know that they're businessmen and they're just being businessmen, but you know what? With this sport being so difficult, the most difficult sport easily on earth, you know what? That's not a good enough excuse to me, just being businessmen. Fuck you. You should honor contenders who have earned their title shot, who have earned it. And at that point, I feel bad as the vacuum cleaner's going up, holding up my rant. But that's okay. That's okay, man. No anger here. No anger here. No anger build-up today. Happy Brazilians are taking over the card. So that's good. Alrighty, guys. That is the main card for this Saturday at UFC Fight Night in Vegas between Thiago Santos and Glover Teixeira. Who is going to be the winner of that fight? Among the other fights on the card, let me know down below in the comments section, and leave a like on the page while you're at it. Subscribe to Garage Guys Sports Talk and watch all of our other YouTube videos on there. We are growing, and I am loving it. We're getting a chokehold on the mainstream. Alrighty, guys. Until then, I'll catch you on the burn side, and I will see you in the next Garage Guys Sports Talk show. Peace. Enjoy the fights.